Hi gang, Rob here. Tonight I'm going to do a follow-up on my Cold Steel American Lawman video. I think as I watched it, if I had been in your position, I'd kind of want to know how all this customization happened. Tonight I'm going to try to walk you through that. I'm not really going to cover reprofiling and sharpening the edge. I'm not really going to cover the sanding of the G10 under the pocket clip because there's plenty of reference materials on YouTube for how to do that. What I am going to do is show you how to disassemble the knife, give you the basics on removing the Cold Steel Tough-X or Teflon coating, and show you what parts of the knife need to be sanded, polished, refinished so the knife works better, and then how to reassemble it. Let's get started with what you're going to need. To take the knife apart, you're going to need two Torx drivers, a T6 and a T10. I'm using my handy Kershaw tool that holds the bits in the handle. In order to strip the coating, you're going to need a high quality epoxy rated stripper. The stripper that I used was Clean Strip KS3 Premium Stripper, and I highly recommend that you buy it in the gel form. You're going to need something to hold the stripper, a glass dish or a disposable dish of some kind. And as I mentioned in my first video, you're going to need a soft steel or brass bristled brush. For the polishing, you're going to need a fine stone of some kind. This is from a Spyderco sharp maker. It is the fine stone. Gunsmithing stones would work well. Some very fine grit, emery cloth or sandpaper. I just have a sheet of 800 grit wet dry sandpaper here. You'll use this for the knife components and then also for polishing the washers. If you have one, a leather strop would be a good thing to have for this operation. Mine has a gray compound on the rough side, green compound on the fine side. This will be used for polishing knife components and washers. Okay, and you'll also need some of this, blue Loctite, for putting your knife back together. Now we're going to start with taking it apart, and I have pre-loosened my fasteners, to save time. First we take out the pivot screw. You'll need to take out one body screw. Need to switch the bits. Sometimes they bind up in the G10 just a bit. You need to be careful taking these in and out. They all screw into the backspacer, which is aluminum, and you don't want to strip those threads or deform the entry threads. Very important as you're doing this, you want to work from the pocket clip side, whichever side you have it on. I'm a lefty, so this may be backwards to some of you. You'll see as I turn the knife over, you have corresponding screws in the other side. Although there's no pocket clip, there are 3 screws. These are shorter than the ones that hold the clip in because they don't have to go through the thickness of the clip, but they also screw into the backspacer and they are used to hold the knife together. And then a body screw on the other side. You want to leave these in place. The work you're going to do will be a lot easier if that backspacer is captured. Okay, now we've got all the screws out on one side of the knife. And now what we've got to do, and I'm going to open this, what we've got to do now is free this scale. And it's going to fight you. Just sort of have to wiggle and wheedle. The things that are left holding the knife together at this point, I'm going to use the pocket clip, are the 2 pins One is the stop pin and one is the pivot for the lock bar. Wow, this thing is really giving me trouble. There we go. Now we've got the knife open. What we need to do now is depress the lock bar, remove the internal stop pin. Maybe we don't on this one actually. On the Recon 1 you're going to need to remove this pin. On the American Lawman you won't need to do it. Now you'll be able to remove the lock bar. At this point you can decide whether or not you need to adjust the back spring. On this knife I actually needed to loosen it. On my Recon 1 I needed a little more tension. If you need to make less tension, you're just going to bend the back spring toward the body of the knife. If you need more tension, obviously you're going to bend it the other way. And do this in small increments and experiment. Okay. Now we've got the blade out. And you're going to notice this knife uses a combination of phosphor bronze washers and Teflon washers. And you want to keep track as you take this apart how they went together. The Teflon is against the knife blade. The phosphor bronze is against the G10. I'm going to take mine out and set them aside. Now obviously when you take this knife apart, this is going to be black. I also suggest that you remove the thumb stud. Easy to do. Flat blade screwdriver on one side. That thing is, I guess I would say it's blued. You don't need to strip it. Stripper won't do it any good. And you're going to need to get behind it with the brush. Once you've got the blade out, you're going to soak it in the gel stripper for about 30 minutes. And I also recommend you soak the lock bar. It's going to take 30 minutes to soften this coating. If you want to leave it in longer, great. Now what I do, since I'm an idiot, I don't use rubber gloves. I take these components out of my stripper. I sort of rinse off the side I want to hold on to, and then I work dipping my brush into my stripper, working it into the blade till I get all the coating off, rinsing with warm water as I go. This stripper will irritate your fingers, so I suggest you wear chemical resistant gloves. I didn't. Most of these knives you're going to see in the pivot hole itself, there will be no coating. If there is coating, I suggest you get in there with a Q-tip and get rid of it. There may be some residual coating. And then when you get done getting all the remnants of the coating off the blade, rinse it thoroughly in warm water. And then I would suggest giving it a light coating of oil, then put your thumb stud back in. When you're ready to polish, here are the areas you're going to need to work on. The area right here where the tooth goes into the back of the knife, you're going to see a lot of tool marks. Polish those out with a stone. If you can get it on your strop or on your fine sandpaper, do that. And then also this radius where the back the lock bar rolls around the tang of your blade. Polish that with fine sandpaper and your strop. And then the lock bar itself is going to need work. The front of it, where it meets the stop pin, you can sand and polish. The bottom of it, where it rides on the blade, you can sand and polish. And then the back of the tooth, in this area, you can sand and polish. You're probably again going to see sparing, if any, coating in the hole. If you notice, this is egg-shaped, it's oval, which allows it to move back and forth on the pin. Make sure that's good and clean. And then the next step that I did was on the lock bar. You can see there's some sanding marks on the side. This isn't a particularly flat piece of metal. I went ahead and deburred it just using a very flat piece of Formica and my 800 grit sandpaper on both sides, and then you're going to want to remove all the pins from the G10 and do the same thing probably everywhere forward of the back spring. What that's going to do is remove any burrs from drilling the G10 and make it good and flat. You don't want to remove any material, you just want to take off the high spots, and do that on both scales. And I don't know if you can see, but mine's of course already been done. Then you're going to want to reassemble the knife, of course only after you polish on your strop both sides of the brass washers. You want to get these good and clean when the knife goes back together. I'm going to do that right now. I'm using a microfiber towel. And I'm going to use some Hoppy's gun oil. I know some of you guys are going to think, oh, Hoppy's gun oil, that's organic, you can't use that. Well, I'd use something more expensive, but my knives get so much maintenance, I don't think I've ever seen any oil get sticky and hard and crusty in my knives, so I'm not going to worry about it. Clean washer. Get that in frame. Clean Teflon washer. Back spring on. Now this is sort of the tricky part. You're going to have to depress the back spring. Get a little oil on my Teflon washer. Install the blade, then release the back spring. It'll hold the blade in. Get my other Teflon washer clean. A little oil around the pivot. Put that on. My other phosphor bronze washer, a little oil on that. Now my other scale. And now my pens. What I'm going to do, guys, on a paper plate, I'm going to squeeze out a little blue Loctite. It's pretty hard to apply this to the end of a screw, so I just like to make a little pool. Dunk my screws in it with them on my Torx bit. And then go straight into the holes. Do the clip first. Just doing this in the reverse order of how I took it apart. Whoops. That wasn't too graceful. Look out. There we go. I'm going to run out of time. But you get the idea. What we're going to be left with is this fluffed, buffed, stripped Cold Steel American Lawman. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. That's it for tonight. Grace and peace.